Welcome. Good morning. Buenos dias. I hope you are well, staying positive and focus on what you can control. Welcome. Drop where you are tuning in from in the chat. Comments. Leverage this opportunity to network, connect with one another. And I do want to pause for a moment and share that our thoughts and prayers are going to the families and communities most recently impacted by the violent tragedies in Texas. Our thoughts and prayers are with you all. And for those of you, welcome to Cafecito for the first time. My name is Patricia Mota, and I serve as President and CEO of HACE, the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement. We are a national nonprofit organization whose mission since 1982 is to positively impact workplaces by cultivating the pipeline of Latino talent, providing our community the insight, access, and support to be successful in their careers. And I know this month of May, we're also celebrating Hispanic, not just Hispanic, Asian American Pacific Islander, or AAPI Heritage Month. And so we've dropped a couple content in our LinkedIn page and others, but we want to hear from you. We want to share your stories as well from, and then Mental Health Awareness Month, right? And then in terms of key announcements for HACE, if you're currently in transition, looking for your next career opportunity, participate in our virtual career fair. It's free, it's virtual, May 18th. And so we'll have that link in the comment section so that you can ensure that you sign up, engage, connect with the recruiters, the leaders from at least 30 companies that are participating. And two more things. So Hombres de HACE, we made an announcement. We have a Latino male leadership training program that has been launched. Applications close on May 19th. And then last but definitely not least, many of you know that we announced our merch store. So where you can get products from HACE, but specifically limited edition products that are part of our 15th anniversary Mujeres de HACE Quinceañera. I know many of you were waiting for that mirror that was on there, or that's on there. We'll drop it in the chat. It's back, so make sure that you get that before we run out again. All right, I think that's it. So please join me in welcoming our special guest here today. We have Melissa Mejia-Polanco, who is the Director of Global Diversity, the first ever, I should say, the first ever Director of Global Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging at Dyson. Buenos dias, Melissa. How are you today?
Buenos dias, Patricia, and thank you so much for having me today. I have to say good evening because I'm in Singapore, so I'll be having a lot of cafecito today to get me through the day.
Well, hey, we want to learn more about what you're doing in Singapore, about your career. But before we get started, Melissa, we ask our guests, how do you like your cafecito, your morning beverage of choice? And we ask for those joining us to share with us as well.
Great question. So I have to say, I'm more of a tea drinker. I just prefer green tea, no sugar, just plain. But I have to say, whenever the jet lag gets in, because the jet lag is real, I admit today I am having cafecito, no sugar, just black straight.
Well, just in time for our cafecito con HACE. So, hey, perfect timing, Melissa. And, you know, one of the things, and folks are sharing in the chat as well what they're drinking, where, you know, let us know where you're tuning in from as well, because we know we have folks from all over. But one of the things I love about our Cafecito con HACE charlas or chats is being able to feature individuals and their stories, right? So Melissa, tell us about your cultural, your professional background, how you got to where you are today. And I think it's such a critical role that you are leading. It's an inaugural role, right, for Dyson, which is a huge company, right? So tell us.
Absolutely. It's such an honor to be the first D&I director, but this didn't happen overnight. So I'm originally a girl from the Bronx. I was born and raised in New York City. My parents are both from a little country in the Caribbean called the Dominican Republic. So I am fluent in Spanish because of my parents, and being first generation, like many of us on the call, I I started working when I was 16. And I worked a lot of different jobs until my first professional job. I worked at Aldo Shoes as a sales associate. I worked at Bank of America as a teller. I worked, oh gosh, as a front desk agent at Sheraton Hotels. And while I had very much entry level roles in those larger organizations, one thing was very, very constant, and is that they had an HR department. And I don't think anyone ever grows up thinking, I'm going to be an HR professional one day. I think you kind of go into it, or you're put in situations that bring alertness of that particular role. And for me, it was being, 16, 17, 18, 19, and seeing my colleagues freak out every time HR was coming to visit, right? And what is HR and why is everyone freaking out, right? What are they here to do? In some cases, HR was here to just visit. Sometimes they were doing training. Sometimes it was compliance, right? So it was a mixture of different things. And that was my first kind of encounter with HR. And then later on, when I entered university, I originally wanted to be a lawyer, and literally decided to change careers over one Wall Street Journal article. It was in the middle of the recession a couple years ago, if we can remember. And there was an article, and I vividly remember saying that, lawyers out of commissions, lawyers are now paralegals, paralegals are now legal secretaries, and essentially legal secretaries are out of a job. And I remember thinking, well, I don't need all that student debt to end up being, a legal secretary. So that was it. I changed my major to HR, and essentially here we are today. But specifically, how did I get into D&I? See, I started my career as an HR professional, most likely like an HR general, business partner. So I did a little bit of everything. I did a little recruiting, training, employee relations. But I quickly noticed, and I was very self-aware, that I found myself happier when I was doing training, when I was engaging with employees, what I like to call the happy side of HR, right? And knowing that, then I started to kind of target those particular roles, right? And that was my journey into the talent space. And I loved being in talent because it gave me the opportunity to be in succession plans, be in those rooms, advocate for people. I know that's one of our discussions today. And then really, it was, I want to say that D&I found me. I didn't found it. I interviewed a long time ago for a recruiting role. And I got a call back, and they said to me, you know what, Melissa, we want to hire you, but not for the role you interviewed. We want to hire you for a completely different role. And I was like, oh, okay, well, what is the role? And the role was for a D&I coordinator. And I remember thinking, honestly, if I'm being honest, I was a little offended. I said to myself, wait a second, I didn't even apply for this role. I didn't even interview for this role. What makes me a good candidate for this role? Or is it the obvious, right? And that didn't make me feel good, if I'm being honest. I had to really rely on my mentors and my sponsors to really give me guidance in what could have been a great opportunity or a missed opportunity at that time. But I took a leap of faith. And here I am today. So sometimes you've got to take the leap of faith.
Melissa, there was so much there that you just shared, right? And first of all, we always have to give a shout out because I know we've got a lot of folks, from the Dominican Republic, right, that are part of our network. A lot of folks from the Bronx, right? So shout out, I know folks that are joining us. But you also talked about, right, your initial beginnings, and I think many of us can relate how our first time jobs in retail, have really shaped our first initial awareness of the workplace. And for you, it seemed like you were honing in on the HR component. And I think that the other key thing is that folks that are always thinking that, like, how do I transition my career? And sometimes there's opportunities that present themselves to us, and I love that you, instead of going to your first mind, right, which is, wait a minute, I'm offended about
Why?
this, which
Yeah.
you did, but you consulted, right? You went to like a group of advisors, mentors, a circle, what you call it, to say, hey, what do you think about this? And versus like immediately reacting. And so that shows a lot of, in terms of your mindset, your growth mindset, which I think is so critical. But let's take a deeper dive on the sponsorship piece, because you mentioned it, right? How has
Yeah.
building those relationships and sponsorships and mentors helped you? I think we got a few examples, but helped you advance in your career.
I think before I go into this topic, I think it's also critically important that I explain what is sponsorship, because I find that it's often confused by other terms that we like to use. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, many times we confuse being a sponsor with being a mentor or being a
Mm-hmm.
coach. And they're used interchangeably, but they fundamentally mean different things. And I think that's important for us to discuss today. So essentially, like if we think about a coach, so a coach usually talks to you, they provide guidance to you, right? When we talk about a mentee talks with you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it gives you the opportunity for you to consult, for you to give them your inner thoughts, and they provide some type of guidance, right? Usually a coach comes in when something is wrong and they're trying to fix usually a soft skill, but a mentor usually guides you. But a sponsor, okay, here's the magic about a sponsor. A sponsor is supposed to speak about you.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, many times we confuse that. We think it's mentoring or
Yeah.
coaching. No, 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 no. A sponsor is supposed to speak about you in rooms where your name does not organically come up, in conversations where you don't organically come up, advocate for you in places where it could transform your career. And for me, thinking back to my career, absolutely, it's been sponsors. And here's the thing about sponsors, because I also sit on the backside on HR. If you think back when you got that first big role in your career, whether we want to admit it or not, chances are there was somebody that was advocating for us, either at that calibration session in the interview, either in a succession plan, there was someone advocating for you. And I think if we all get into the mindset that someone advocated for me and we pay it forward, I think then we
Mm-hmm.
start to drive some change, especially when it comes to the type of talent that we're seeing at leadership.
Absolutely. And I hope all of you all joining in would love to hear from you in the comment section. If you have a mentor, if you have a sponsor, if you have any questions, we're getting ready to ask Melissa some additional questions. So make sure to drop those in the chat as well. Melissa, we mentioned, well, first of all, Dyson's a new partner of HACE, and so we're excited about this partnership. You all also had the opportunity to join us during our National Leadership Summit that we just had about 3 weeks ago, right? And then in your role specifically, leading global diversity and inclusion projects and programs, can you share with us the ways that your company is accelerating equity and inclusion to help diverse talent excel? And I know we have your colleague Chloe joining us, so shout out to
Yes.
Chloe.
Shout
And
out to Chloe.
I know she's going to be dropping some more information regarding Dyson here in the chat as well. So tell us more, Melissa.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think I should start off by saying, and I think you mentioned it in your introduction, I am Dyson's first D&I director. I started a year and a half ago. Chloe joined like a month later in the team. So we are a fairly new team. We're fairly new in our journey. But I want to say, I think the number one reason why we've been able to do so much in such a short amount of time is because of leadership support, and ensuring that everyone feels that they're part of the journey. So, one of the first things, of course, that Chloe and I and the extended team wanted to do was launch our D&I strategy, right? We didn't have one. And we had to start with the fundamentals, defining those key terms that people use interchangeably. What is diversity? What is inclusion? What is equity? What is equality? What is belonging? Because these are terms that people use interchangeably. And we were starting from the very foundation. Everyone is in a different phase in the journey. So the first thing we did was launch our D&I strategy. We had employees involved in sessions. They gave us feedback. Leadership was involved. So it was a collective effort. And once we've launched it, and by the way, our D&I strategy is very simple. We want to build inclusive teams, diversify our workforce, and put D&I at the forefront. Those are our three core principles that are driving us in our journey. And the moment that we launched our D&I strategy, we kind of took a look at ourselves and we said, wait a second, if we're advocating for managers to cascade these messages, then we need to give them the tools to do that. So the first thing we did is we wanted to increase the inclusion capabilities of our managers, and we did that by launching our very first managing inclusion training. I mean, literally, Patricia, it's been 1 year, a year and a half, and we've trained close to 2,000 managers already. And I'm not talking about e-learning, click, 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 take a quiz at the end. I am talking about me, Chloe, shout out to Nathan and Irina, who's also part of the team. Collectively, the four of us are out there in the regions, doing it face to face, bringing people together, especially post-COVID, where people are yearning that sense of belonging and being together. So that was one of our big wins for sure. And we're on track to training all managers mid next year. The Americas is done. The UK is done. We're on our way here in APAC and also throughout EMEA. So we're very proud of that.
Congratulations.
Thank
and,
you.
And you know, the question still stands what you're doing in Singapore. I don't think we've...
Well, we're doing training. We're doing more training.
Okay, figured.
No, we're doing training. We want to make sure that the message is cascaded. And then one of the second things we also did, which is very fitting for our conversation today, is we launched our very first global sponsorship program. So as part of our D&I strategy, we want to build inclusive teams, and we're focusing on three main areas. We want to increase the representation of female talent at the leadership level, local Asian talent as well here in Asia at the leadership level, but equally also racial diversity, particularly in the US and the UK. And one of the things that we know works, right? Research shows it works, is when you have a sponsor, a leader within the organization that is advocating on your behalf. So we paired up our top talent, diverse and female talent throughout the organization with one of our senior leaders. We got their commitment. And the program launched about a year ago, and they've been meeting with their leaders quarterly. Their names are coming up on succession plans. I'm happy to report about 30% are now in new roles and have been promoted. It's been really, really great. Pilot program, if I can call it that, but I don't want to call it a pilot because I want to continue this journey. And listen, we are early on our journey. There's so much more to do. I think many of us can recognize that D&I is not a flip the switch. The job is never done. We look at companies that are leaders in this space, and we know that there's so much to do. And I think what I love about this space is that the work never ends.
Melissa, the work does not end. And it looks like we've got a question, so we'll see that on the screen. But I have to say, you've accomplished quite a bit in a year. And so kudos to you and the team. We have Javier or Xavier Cano. Thank you for hosting. What actions can people take to identify a sponsor? Great question.
Very good question. Well, I think it really begins on three main questions. What are you trying to achieve in your career, right? So that's number one. And you can find a sponsor by kind of looking up in the organization. What role do you want in the future? Who has it or who had it? And ask them for advice. Can they sponsor you? Usually, if I'm gonna say this honestly, if it's an informal sponsorship program, it usually starts as mentorship. And then once you build that confidence and trust, that person organically becomes your sponsor. I think a second approach is to kind of think back also on the role you currently have and who had your role in the past. I think many times we just look up and we forget about, wait, actually, who has lived what I'm living right now and who can help me? I think that's a forgotten aspect. So many times I find it very useful to talk to peers, talk to people who had my role in the past, talk to other D&I directors that were the first D&I directors in their role. And I also asked them to sponsor me. And honestly, it's been life-changing. So I think go for it. Don't be shy. Think about what you want. Be very clear about what you want out of the relationship too, because it's a two-way street, right? We also want to ensure that our sponsors are getting insights from us, are learning from us, and are enjoying this partnership as well.
Yeah, it's about communicating, right? What you want, make sure you're sharing your dreams, your aspirations, making those connections, and making sure that you're sharing how you're making impact, right? With others outside of your immediate team, your immediate circle. So lots of great tips and advice. We want you to encourage everyone to keep dropping questions in the chat. Melissa, we're so proud of you. We're cheering you on to continue the great work. We're proud of the partnership that we have with Dyson. And so we'll leave everyone with a positive note. So, what is something that gives you hope or a positive story that gives you hope for the future?
Honestly, it has to be, and I know this may be a little cheesy, right? But I think about all of our DNI champions, particularly here at
Mm,
Dyson. And for those of us that work in organizations where you have local champions, we have to remind ourselves that people are doing this on top of their daily roles. And when
yeah.
people commit to that because it's their passion, it's really telling about the culture that you're driving within your organizations. Embrace those champions, give them a platform, and make sure that you're having their voices heard. And that's how you're going to cascade your message.
That does not sound cheesy, Melissa. Thank you for sharing. We love it. We appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll stay in touch. Y hasta la próxima. Until next time. Thank you.
Adios, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, Melissa.